Welcome back to another episode of Swine Versation, getting to know people in the industry with Shelbi Perry from Merck Animal Health. Welcome to the program, Shelbi.
Thank you for having me today, Jim.
So you're a territory manager for Merck Animal Health. Now let's go backtrack to your story. Where did it begin and how did you get in the swine industry?
Yeah, so my story, I think, began at a really young age. My mom has pictures of me sitting next to the farrowing crates with some of my dad's show pigs as early as the age of 2 or 3. And really, that's when it started. I loved going to the barn, loved spending time with my dad out there. It was really a family affair. My sisters showed as well. So started there, and then as I got more responsibility, started to really like the show pigs. Dad decided to start farrowing a couple more sows and let me start to make some of the decisions, like picking some boars on my sows. And really, that's where it started. From there, I was hooked, and it really led me to choose the academic pathway that I did, and ultimately the career path that I've ended up choosing.
Was it sometime during childhood that you had a career direction of where you wanted to go, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of kids, when you grow up really liking science and really liking animals, veterinarian is what you're really pushed towards. I started my undergraduate career kind of focused in that veterinary space, but there's one moment that really kind of intrigued me in terms of repro, which is what I did my master's in. And we had a sow. It was the first pig I've ever pulled, or first guild I ever pulled pigs from. And this is going to sound strange, but as soon as I started pulling pigs, I was like, there's a whole part of this pig that I've never considered. I've only ever previously considered about phenotypic characteristics, not necessarily what's going on inside. So I think that moment really kind of opened my eyes that there's a lot more going on in these animals that I love than just what's on the outside.
So education, how important was your progression through college? Maybe touch on your time at Purdue and the University of Missouri.
Yeah. So my educational background taught me a lot. So as I said, I grew up with show pigs. And so I loved it, wanted to work with animals, got to Purdue University, and started my pathway on the pre-vet path. Really enjoyed a lot of those classes, but I think I quickly learned that pigs were what I was passionate about, not necessarily dogs and cats. And I knew if I went the veterinary route, that was going to be what I was going to be studying. So really, I just started to focus on some classwork and got involved with some undergraduate research opportunities with Dr. Kara Stewart at Purdue. She helped get me on some projects that her master's and her PhD student were running. And that's when I really started to learn more about the research aspect of our industry. I had no experience in that previously, and I'd also never worked with commercial livestock. I'd only ever worked with show livestock. So there was a lot I learned there. And ultimately, between Purdue and Mizzou, the reason I got to Mizzou with Dr. Safranski was because of Dr. Stewart. She was super helpful in teaching me how, or the differences between going to vet school versus going to graduate school. I ultimately chose graduate school, and Dr. Safranski came highly recommended from Dr. Stewart.
Did anyone else influence you?
I think there's a lot of influencers. Dr. Stewart, as I've mentioned, Dr. Safranski, he was a great mentor, really actually got me into commercial barns, got me thinking about how what we do in research isn't necessarily always what's best for the industry or most practical for the industry. So those are a lot of things I hadn't considered just because my background was limited in terms of commercial production. Um, in the previous question, I referenced my dad. My dad supported me through all of my show pig endeavors. And my mom, she's always been a huge supporter of all of my hobbies like that as well. So really, support from all different directions have influenced me to where I am today.
So one of the reasons why we have this program is to talk to up and coming people in the swine industry, having good conversations. There's a lot of good people up there. You're kind of an up and comer, young professional making a mark. So talk to me about your career at Merck and being a territory manager and all of the different relationships that you manage and things that you do?
Yeah. So I started my career at Merck about 3 years ago. I had previously had an internship with Merck actually between my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. So I was a swine sales intern there and started to kind of learn what a career in sales might look like. Because as I'd said, my academic background's more science focused rather than business related. And so getting into the sales space, I think I kind of had the mentality that sales was like your used car salesman. And I quickly learned in my internship and now also my job that that's not the case whatsoever. The people that I work with in with Merck and then with my customers, they're all super passionate about the industry and really care about what they're doing. So I think in terms of my job, relationships are what I value most, and I think that's what I hinge a lot of my achievements on so far through my career. Really building those relationships not only with your producers, but also your veterinarians in the pharmaceutical space. Um, Being able to navigate those pathways and have an open line of communication between the producers, the vet, and yourself is something that I think is super important and definitely drives success in this industry.
So you're a relationship builder. What else do you want to achieve in the field?
Honestly, I know since I'm in sales, you would think it would be a number or something along those lines. But what I want to be in the field is a trusted resource. I want my producers, when something goes wrong, that they know they can pick up the call or pick up the phone and call me. And if I don't have the answers, I'll get them in touch with somebody that does. I want to be that person that can help them solve various problems or get them the resources they need to solve those issues. So that's really what I want to achieve throughout my career, I think.
What motivates you every day?
Um, Honestly, the people. Um, I like the people I work with. They're passionate about our industry. They're driven. They wake up every day and they know that their end mission is ultimately to feed the population. And that's a really big load that they have on their shoulders and that they do honestly with a lot of grace. It's a daunting challenge and they take it in every day and do a great job at it. So the people that I work with are definitely what gets me up and moving every day.
What does a typical day actually look like for you, Shelby?
Yeah, so my days look they're very different, honestly. Some days I'm on farm. That could be doing fecal samples for worms. That could be helping with projects, maybe bleeding pigs, going around with our tech vets, or with veterinarians that I work with. I could be at trade shows. That's a huge portion of our job. So networking with new people is something I still really enjoy since I'm really early on in my career. And that's a huge portion of my job. But then the other is at my desk. I work from home. And so, really looking at numbers, looking at opportunities, comparing sequences. One of our products is Sequivity. And so, that's a really, in that's a the Sequivity platform requires us to compare sequences to see what vaccines might be best. And so some of my days are spent doing that as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
And you still think relationship building is the key?
Honestly, yes. I think relationship building is super important. Obviously, as someone who's young in their career, you've got to be super driven. All of the things that we kind of know that we need to do. But I think the people in the agricultural industry really do value relationships and really value knowing the person they work with and knowing that they have their best interests at mind.
What about points of interest? So, some of the things that you've learned and applied in school to your current job has been
Mhm.
successful in kind of launching your career. Talk to me about guilt development.
Yeah. So my master's degree was a little unique. I went in hoping to learn a lot about swine reproduction, and I did. Dr. Safranski was a great teacher. But my actual project was in mice. I looked at how a mutation in the prolactin receptor would would improve or if it would change heat tolerance. It improves heat tolerance in beef cattle. And so we were wondering if that would have the same effect in mice and then ultimately possibly pigs. So really, I went in thinking I was going to have a pig project, but I had a mouse project. So I think the skill that my master's program really taught me was adaptability. Learning to go with the flow, learning to make the best of situations that maybe were not exactly what you thought they would be, but that you're still going to learn a lot from. And I think that's something I have to do with my job every day. I mean, I have to bend my schedule to other people's schedules, being able to work with different personality types, work with different people in the industry, vets, producers, on-farm workers, being able to navigate all of those different communication styles and different settings is something that you need to be really adaptable for. So I think my master's definitely taught me a lot in terms of that. And then you mentioned guilt development, and Dr. Safranski, I think one of the things he really hones in on his students is that you've got to treat guilts like guilts. And so that's something that I really took away from him. I mean, we're asking these girls to do a lot. We're asking them to not only gestate litters, but then also still grow on top of it. So taking into account that they do need to be treated different from a sow is something that he really tries to hone in. And I think a lot of his students would agree with.
Are there any other differences between Purdue and Missouri?
Um, so yeah, there were a couple differences. I think at both institutions, the animal science departments are amazing. I could not speak more highly of either of them. I think naturally I'm going to perceive them a little differently because I did my undergraduate degree at Purdue and wasn't as focused on lab work as I was at the University of Missouri. But in terms of the faculty at each institution and the rigor of the coursework, I think they're on par with each other. And I'm very thankful to have been able to go to both of them.
Other than guilt development, what are some other areas of interest or expertise?
In terms of for myself,
Just some of the things that you've learned or bring to the field.
yeah. So like I said, I think Dr. Safranski really tries to hone in on the treating guilts like guilts. So that's something that's super important. And then really with him, we spent a lot of time working on AI and teaching on-farm workers the importance of hygienic AI and asking if you're having abort issues. Yes, it could be a disease challenge, obviously, but are you inseminating with clean rods? Are you setting the rods on top of the crates prior to inseminating just to try to speed things up? So really, those are things I try to look at. I think when I'm in barns, really, if you can just sit back and watch people do what they would naturally do, you can learn a lot. And that's something Dr. Safranski had taught me as well, just kind of being a little bit of a wallflower and watching, and then making your assessments after. And I think that's something I still try to do when I go on farm today.
What about nurturing ag forward? So there's a lot of changes, consolidation, social media, different ways to get messages out. What do we need to do to continue to nurture the industry forward in the right way?
Yeah. So I grew up in a rural area. Chalmers, Indiana is not a metropolis by any stretch of the imagination. And so a lot of people at home are really in tune with ag. They know a farmer, they know a hog producer. So moving to where I live now, which is Kansas City, has been a big transition. Things that I think are second nature are not second nature to a lot of the people that live here. So I think in terms of nurturing ag forward, the small interactions make a big difference. There's a lot of people that I go to the gym with that don't know a lot about agriculture and are really interested in my job because they had no idea my job existed. So I think in those small instances that maybe or interactions that maybe we take for granted, I think those are real opportunities to help portray our message. I think we are our biggest advocates and showing people that we do take good care of our pigs, we do care about their well-being. We're really trying to make their lives the best that we can while they're here. And so I think us portraying that message and being positive advocates for our own industry is something that's really important and probably overlooked.
If we can take your passion and then one person at a time, I think we can continue to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope.
Do we need like a face for the industry, do you think? Or
Um, I don't know. I think honestly, all of us combined are kind of the faces of the industry. I know that we do put a lot, or the national organizations do put a lot of money towards getting faces to support the industry. Like I think right now it's Luke Bryan. So having those people that are trying to bring it to the mainstream media is super important. But a lot of us talk to many different people in a day, whether that be at the gym, at your child's school, really wherever you're at, there's an opportunity. Even at the grocery store, I bought a pork loin a couple weeks ago, and a lady asked me why I was buying the whole loin because she didn't know that you could cut that up into pork chops if you wanted, because there were pre-cut pork chops right next to it. And so little interactions like that, you can teach someone a little bit about our industry. And it doesn't take much time out of your day.
you're from Indiana. Have you been to Santa Claus, Indiana?
I have to Holiday World.
Yeah, I saw the movie. I had to ask. So
Yep.
as we transition a little bit more into you, Shelby, just a short glimpse on the person outside of the ag pharma world. What are some of your hobbies?
Yeah. So outside of the ag and the pharma world, I really love reading. I recently was also got engaged, and so my fiance and I really love to go hiking. We really like to go to national and state parks. Um, I spend a lot of time with my dog. He's probably more spoiled than he should be. Um, and I'm really into coffee. I recently got an espresso machine, and I like to try to be my own little barista every morning. I'm not sure how good it tastes, but we're getting there. So those are some of my hobbies.
Is there like a skill to that? Because we use the Keurig but we're looking
There's
at the Nespresso.
Yeah, there's more than I thought to it. I'm knowing how to grind the beans to make the best espresso is becoming it's far more time consuming than I had initially thought, but we're getting there. I think I can make drinks now that are at least drinkable. So it's progress.
The All Trails app.
The All Trails, yes, I've used that.
And anything people do not know about you?
Um, I'm not sure. I like I said, I think I'm pretty boring. I just like to read and go hiking and things along those lines.
Make coffee too.
Yep, and drink a lot of coffee, probably more than I should.
So we've touched on the building relationships. So let's touch on it one more time. Building relationships and transparency with sales. So why has transparency been key to your success?
Yeah, I think in this industry where we have so many moving parts, we've got the workers on farm, we've got the managers, we've got veterinarians. Making sure that everybody is on the same page is critical. If you're implementing a new vaccine protocol, if you're implementing a new vaccine that maybe is handled differently than other products that you have, just making sure that you're communicating with all levels of production so that the same message is being relayed across the board is something I think is super important and is really, it's something I learned during my internship ultimately because I saw my now coworkers doing that, and that's something that I've tried to implement as much as I can into my current career.
Because you find with clear communication between like suppliers, producers, and vets, then it allows you to establish what solutions can be implemented for herd health and safety. So that communication between everybody leads to that end success.
Correct.
So let's end on this. The 30-second pitch. What makes the Merck portfolio key for success?
Yeah, so I'm a sales rep, so I could sit here and I could tell you how great I think our products are. And at the end of the day, I do, or I wouldn't be sitting here. But really, I think what makes Merck's portfolio important for success isn't necessarily, it is the products, but it's also what we're doing to help support the industry. I mean, you've mentioned I'm young in my career. And so Merck recently just donated over $50,000 in scholarships at AASV to new veterinary students that are hoping to pursue a career in swine medicine. We partnered with Iowa State's Diagnostic Lab, their new lab. And as I said, I'm I'm an example of that. They invested in my career when I was an intern, and then ultimately I came back. So when you are buying products from Merck and you're supporting Merck, you're not just supporting a pharmaceutical company, you're supporting a company that really does care about moving the industry forward, and they're working on doing that through the younger generation. So it's a partnership with science, but you're also investing in new talent as well.
Well, it's a really great conversation, Shelby. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I want to say thank you for having me. This has been great, getting to talk and getting to tell some of my story. I do know that at Merck, if you do have any questions or want to learn anything about our company, we do have drivenbyprevention.com that if people would like to go look at that, they can. But other than that, just thank you for having me today.
Well, Shelby Perry, thanks for joining us on In Swine Versation.
Thank you.